Hi folks, in today's video we're going into builds and loadouts for the Veteran Sharpshooter class in Warhammer 40K Darktide. I'll be explaining the setup and reasoning for what I consider to be the best all-around build you can possibly make, and afterwards I'll give some solid alternatives if you enjoy different guns or playstyles. So let's jump straight into it. Okay, so to start out we should talk about the Veteran's primary role. After all, this is a team game, so what should the Veteran be doing to support their team? Can they delete half a Plague Overrun's health bar in a matter of seconds? Totally. Can Veterans mow down the meatiest crushers and maulers like nobody's business? Absolutely, and I will cover a build that does just that. But this is a co-op game where you work in a group, and the other classes can handle those threats just as well, if not better than the Veteran. So I'd argue that the Veteran's job boils down to two extremely important things that he does better than any other class, and those are taking out packs of riflemen and picking off medium to long range specialist and elite threats before they can interfere with the rest of your team. In low-level missions, the riflemen are more of a nuisance than anything, just chipping your toughness and distracting you from dealing with the crushers that are in your face. But as you start increasing the mission threat level, rifle mobs begin to become some of the most dangerous encounters in the whole game. You'll enter a large room with upwards of 40 riflemen all over the floors and walls and ceilings, laying down a blistering hellfire that can drop anyone outside of cover in just a matter of moments. And if your teammates aren't downed outright, they'll be hard-pressed to combat the melee threats slamming into them while they're trying to stay under cover. Ranged specialists and elites can also cause huge problems when a horde of maulers and ragers is crashing in your team like a tsunami. Bombers will create huge areas of denial and death, snipers can almost instantly end nearly anyone lacking mobility, and the gunners, shotgunners, and reapers in the back can shred everyone to pieces. So building your sharpshooter to quickly and efficiently dismantle these threats will keep your team alive and thankful to have you along with them. So how do we go about it? Let's take a look at the Veteran's feat tree first. This layout here is what I consider to be the strongest and most versatile Veteran build. Tiers 1, 4, and 6 are basically mandatory for this setup, though several of the other tiers actually have pretty good alternative picks that work really well, but I'll explain why I think this layout is ultimately the best. Alright, so in the first tier we're using Confirmed Kill, which is just bonkers how good it is. You get 50% toughness for every elite that you kill, and there are generally no shortage of elites to kill. Half of the toughness regen is applied as a buff, which stacks by the way, so you can pick off a few elites and then go to town on a group of ranged and never have to worry that your toughness will drop since it's constantly being replenished. Exhilarating Takedown is also a decent choice as you'll generally be killing a lot of mobs with headshots, but it requires you to specifically get a headshot and it has no regen over time feature, so you need to be consistently chaining headshots to stay up, which isn't always feasible in every situation. At arm's length might have some fringe use cases, but it's generally too slow and situational to be effective. In the second tier we're using Demolition Stockpile. I love this perk because I think it really helps round out the sharpshooter's kit. It gives you one grenade every minute the entire game, which ensures that you almost always have at least one on hand when you need to take some pressure off the team. By taking this, you can focus the rest of your feats in your arsenal on the tasks I listed earlier, and you'll still always be able to reliably help your team in most situations. The Veteran grenades are great and can clear out huge chunks of hordelings handily, as well as stagger the heftier elites like crushers and bulwarks. They're also fairly handy with helping you make clutch revives on your teammates. If you find you rarely use grenades or you rarely run out, you should probably be using more grenades because they're awesome. But in that case, you can run Sniper as it can be an okay pick. It might help you hit certain breakpoints where you only need one shot instead of two to drop mobs with non-headshots. But to me the benefit is just too small compared to the enormous versatility of always having grenades on hand. Tactical Reload could help speed up the reload on some of your big bulky guns, but even still it's usually inferior to Demolition Stockpile because that one is just so strong. In the third tier we have Bio-Optic Targeting, which lets your class ability highlight enemies for your teammates as well as yourself. This perk is incredibly useful at keeping your team informed on the location of other threats while you focus on taking out everything downrange. Demolition Team gives everyone in Coherence a small chance to get a grenade back on an elite kill, and this generally gives you and your party a few extra grenades during a mission, which can be fairly useful, but I find it's generally not as consistently powerful as Bio-Optics. Covering fire sounds pretty good on paper until you realize that you're usually not firing into a horde near your Zealot and your Ogren, and you're firing across the map at all the bad shooty things. So again, Bio-Optics just blows this one out of the water. At level 20, we have probably the strongest perk, which is Unwavering Focus. Now, I actually avoided this talent for a really long time in favor of Camo Expert, but I eventually changed my tune, and boy, I'm glad I did. Unwavering Focus reduces the damage from attacks by 75% for the duration of your Volley Fire class ability, which is going to be active a lot in this build due to our final talent, which we'll talk about in a moment. This build literally lets you just stand in the open and pick off gunners one by one while they helplessly plug away at your invulnerable shield. Your confirmed kill talent from tier 1 and your coherency bonus will steadily replace any of your chip damage you take from gunfire that makes it through your damage reduction. But why, you ask me? Why wouldn't I just take Camo Expert and not get hit at all? Well, 2 reasons. First, if things aren't shooting at you, where do you think they're shooting? Your teammates. With unwavering focus, you can soak all that damage, no sweat, and give your teammates a break. Second, with the sheer volume of crap flying your way on high threat level missions and the fast pace of level traversal, you often need to move and break your camo, at which point you can quickly and immediately be murdered. Especially if you avoided moving into a safer spot earlier to try to tough out a situation in your camo, or if your teammates get pushed away from you until enemies decide to focus on you. Bottom line is that it forces you to make subpar positioning choices and then leaves you completely vulnerable. That being said, on lower threat level missions or with a different playstyle, Camo Expert is an insanely good talent, as well as a lot of fun to play around with. It can make you a teammate revival champ as you won't be knocked off your buddy while you're picking him up, and it makes you great at fixing servo skulls because as long as someone is nearby, no one will interrupt you. But overall, I'd suggest going with unwavering focus. For our 5th tier choice, we have One After Another, which makes your next reload 30% faster after you kill an elite. I like this one because it helps us reload decently faster so we can get back to shooting priority targets and keep our volley fire up for as long as possible. The time during your reload can be your most vulnerable time in this build since it eats into your time to refresh volley fire, which will keep up your damage reduction from unwavering focus. So some reload speed actually helps quite a bit by giving you more time to take out a priority target after you reload before you lose volley fire. The next best choice is Deadshot, which admittedly can be very strong. It adds a very noticeable stability to your shots and a whopping plus 25% crit chance, but at the cost of all of your stamina, which will be totally depleted after about 5 to 6 shots depending on the situation. And once your stamina is gone, you lose all the bonuses, and you'll have no stamina to use defensively if you need to move quickly or deal with a melee threat. So I generally prefer to avoid this one. The last choice, Fragstorm, sounds pretty good at first, but the bleed stacks you apply decay very quickly and usually don't even have enough juice to kill hordlings that catch the edge of your grenade blast, so this one's a pretty weak choice actually. Alright, now tier 6, the Veteran's final feat. All the feats in this tier share a feature, which is that killing a priority highlighted target during volley fire resets its duration, effectively letting you stay in volley fire indefinitely as long as you have targets to kill. Now we're going to abuse this by picking counterfire, which marks almost all ranged mobs and riflemen as priority targets. This means that when you walk into that room of 40 riflemen, all you have to do is plant yourself, activate volley fire, and face tank all of them while you kill them one by one following the highlighted outlines. With counterfire, you maintain all the damage reduction, suppression immunity, and damage bonus at volley fire for literally minutes at a time. It's straight up ridiculous, and so you'll generally want to take counterfire over anything else. Sustained fire is also very good as it instantly replenishes 60% of your toughness and reloads your weapon, so this can be great for reacting to huge incoming damage or recovering from fire, as well as when you're using clunky guns with long reloads. But it simply can't outperform counterfire for what we're here to do, which is to take out as many riflemen as possible. The bigger they are adds Ogren and Monstrosities to the priority target list and gives you a big damage boost, but Ogren and Monstrosities are not what the Sharpshooter is really here to deal with, and also they're some of the least common enemies, so this one's pretty much always a pass unless you're going for a penance. Alright, so now that we understand our build and what we're trying to accomplish, let's take a look at our weapon choices. The absolute hands-down winner of the arms race is the Kantrael Mark 12 Lasgun. This thing is so overtuned, it's just stupid. It's 100% accurate at any range, one of the highest damage shots in the game, an enormous magazine and ammo reserve, decent rate of fire, and clean reticule for ADS. This thing is just a beast, and for doing our job of clearing a room of rifle mobs and any long-range elites or specials, nothing can do the job better. You can one-shot, headshot even elite gunners, and 1 to 2 body shot rifle mobs. And its damage output is so efficient that you'll pretty much never run out of ammo, and you won't be hogging ammo from your teammates. Its main weakness is that it doesn't have any armor penetration, so it can't damage crushers at all, and it can't really damage monstrosities very quickly. It also can't react to oh shit moments where a bunch of enemies collapse on you and your team isn't able to help fend them off. But that's where your grenades and your melee weapon come into play. This build pairs very well with a power sword, which is just far and away one of the best melee weapons in the game. It can cleave through hordes like butter and deal significant damage to armored enemies like crushers, bulwarks, maulers, and even assassination boss shields. Even though the power sword is incredibly strong, it's also important to know its weaknesses as well. You'll need to activate its secondary ability to charge it up every 2 to 3 swings to keep it effective, which can take precious milliseconds if you're in a desperate situation. Its single target damage output is also a bit lower than other melee weapon choices you could make, but it certainly gets the job done very well regardless. Lastly, it also leaves a lot to be desired in the areas of mobility and block efficiency. But all that being said, if you get your hands on a solid power sword, you can use it with pretty much any build and it'll do wonders. A decent alternative melee weapon is the Antax Mark V Combat Axe, if it has the Brutal Momentum Blessing on it. This does slightly better single target damage and boasts much higher mobility. However, even with Brutal Momentum on it, which might be difficult to get by the way, depending on how much RNG decides to rain on your parade, you'll still be sacrificing significant horde clearing ability for the extra mobility, which isn't a great trade in my opinion. You'll also need to pull off a headshot to start the Brutal Momentum combo, whereas with the Power Sword you just press a button to start murdering. So for me, the Power Sword is still the suggestion of choice. So that is the build and loadout for what I consider to be the most powerful and versatile sharpshooter you can make, who will not only kick ass but also help support his team in a very significant way. But if you don't enjoy using the Mark 12 or you want a different playstyle, a decent weapon alternative is the Agripinaa Mark 8 braced autogun. It has great hipfire accuracy and great burst damage, as well as some round penetration, making it better at dealing with intense situations than the Mark 12. And where this weapon really begins to shine is when you get one with the hit and run blessing, which makes you immune to ranged attacks after you make a close range kill. This lets you walk into a room full of riflemen and just stroll around executing them 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. The build for this weapon is actually the exact same as the previous build for the Mark 12 Lasgun. Not only is this loadout a ton of fun, but it also actually surpasses the Mark 12 build in its ability to let you take on much more dangerous situations, such as when a teammate goes down and you're more or less on your own. It tends to lend itself to a much more aggressive playstyle, where you're charging headlong into groups of mobs to wreak havoc. This can be problematic though, as you can easily get yourself killed if you misjudge a distance to cover or lose volley fire at the wrong moment, as you can be caught defenseless without the damage reduction. I also find this build to be fairly ammo hungry as well, so you'll need to manage your ammo much more carefully. It also struggles to deal with any threats beyond mid-distance, as the autogun quickly loses all its accuracy at range. But if you can master this playstyle, this build is seriously powerful and seriously fun. Now, if you're not really interested in team composition and you just want to blow stuff up, the Boltgun might be right up your alley. The Boltgun will absolutely obliterate anything you point it at and is so satisfying to use. It is extremely accurate at any range, does a massive amount of damage, blows through multiple enemies at once with high penetration, and does some splash damage AoE around anything you hit. It has a ton of stagger to knock crushers or anything else flat on their ass, and touts a 15-round magazine that you can use full auto from the hip or single action from ADS. I can't overstate how fun this gun is to use. It can 1 to 2 shot pretty much any enemy in the game but ogrins and monstrosities, and from any distance, and it just feels incredible. To use it effectively, we're probably going to want to modify the feats from our previous builds very slightly. I recommend changing your tier 6 choice to sustained fire, because you probably won't be trying to pick off multiple riflemen with this gun, and sustained fire will automatically reload your gun when it's activated. This is very useful as the Boltgun has one of the slowest reload times of any weapon in the game. It will also recharge 60% of your toughness, which could save you if you're going toe-to-toe with a pack of maulers or an ogrin. With sustained fire you can get 30 rounds off in about 5 seconds, which will disintegrate just about anything unlucky enough to be in front of you. You might also consider changing the tier 2 from demolition stockpile to tactical reload for some extra reload speed, because again, the Boltgun reload is slow. If you do this, I'd recommend changing tier 3 from bio-optics to demolition team to recover some of your grenades, because grenades are still great with the Boltgun, so you don't want to run out. But these two choices are very optional depending on your playstyle. While the Boltgun is incredibly powerful, it has some pretty significant weaknesses as well. As mentioned, it has a very slow reload speed, as well as a very slow draw when you switch to it from your melee. This makes it very hard to respond to threats quickly unless you pop your volley fire, which might waste some of the benefits of your sustained fire. Also, while it's very accurate at range, it also has very strong recoil and sway, meaning only your first shot will really be accurate, and after that you'll need to wait a long time between shots to let the gun settle if you need more accuracy. This makes it quite hard to take out multiple small spread out targets like riflemen or snipers in an efficient way. Additionally, it's very ammo hungry. You have a bit over 100 round capacity and you can go through 30 rounds in one volley, so if you're not careful you'll be dry for most of the map. or you'll be stealing all the ammo from your teammates, which won't make them love you very much.
That was my ammo!
Because of all these drawbacks, I generally only take this build into heresy difficulty and avoid taking it into damnation missions unless I'm with another sharpshooter who I know is going to be able to clear out nests of riflemen. Now this next gun is more of a meme build than anything, but it can be quite fun and fairly effective on malice difficulty and below, and passable on heresy, though things start to get dicey on damnation, so be warned. For this build we're going back to the same feats as we used for the first couple builds, but we're going to be using a Recon Lasgun. They come in Mark II, Mark 7A, and Mark 6D, and any will work for this build, but the Mark 6D is generally considered to be the best. And in order for this build to work, you're going to need to find one of these guns with the Infernus Blessing, which adds stacks of burning to the target when you make a critical hit. The playstyle is similar to that of the Mark 12 Lasgun build, but you'll be raining dozens of lasers into your target and lighting them on fire instead of 1 to 2 tapping them. It tends to do a bit better than the Mark 12 on large enemies and bosses, but it falls short in pretty much every other regard. Still, it's a fun build that works and can mix things up if you're tired of using a different build like the Mark 12. Okay, now before we wrap up, I want to mention Curios. You can mix and match whatever Curios you want to match your playstyle, but the 3 strongest blessings tend to be Toughness, Health, and Wound Curios. Curios tend to support your playstyle more than any particular build, as they generally don't have much synergy to your weapons, so you can set and forget 3 Curios of your choice and try out different builds. I personally enjoy running 3 Toughness Curios, as the Veteran has the most toughness of any class and thereby gets the most benefit out of these Curios. The Vet also has a lot of +% toughness recovery abilities that scale very nicely with a large toughness pool, and these will easily support you through even damnation difficulty. Health Curios can be useful if you find yourself struggling to survive toughness breaking mechanics like fire, bursters, or assassination boss abilities. They can also help offset Grimoire corruption, as Grimoire damage is fixed and not percentage based. Wound Curios can help especially on hearsay and damnation missions, as these mission difficulties reduce the number of wounds you have by 1 for the whole mission, so without a Curio you can be only revived 1 time before you die outright and need rescuing. You might want to run a Wound Curio during your first forays into these high difficulty missions until you feel a bit more confident in your abilities, and then I would swap it out for toughness or for health. In terms of perks, I enjoy taking the -% damage from snipers, because snipers at full damage can one-shot you on damnation difficulty and put your team in a really bad spot if they're unable to counterfire the sniper before reviving you, and sometimes sniper fire is just unavoidable. I would generally avoid the other -damage% types besides sniper unless you find yourself struggling with one particular enemy type. Note here also that gunner resistance applies to elite gunners and to reapers, but not to regular riflemen or to elite shotgunners. I also like plus toughness regeneration speed, as it keeps your toughness up while you're in coherency with your team, which should be almost all the time. Other top contenders for me are more toughness, combat ability speed, and stamina regeneration. But pretty much any choice besides XP and dockets can be good if it supports your playstyle, and you can stack 2 to 3 instances of it across your Curios. Okay, and with that concludes our guide on Veteran Sharpshooter builds. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, and if you'd enjoy more content from me, please consider subscribing to the channel. And until next time, happy gaming.